everyone. Welcome to the Panda Hub, the Panda Pavilion, for our next event, which is From Crisis to Climate Resilience, local solutions in fragile states. So without further ado, I'd like to invite all our panelists to come to the front. And then I will introduce our panelists, and then we can start with our program. Right. So
Para ikaw ang
I will. I will join that. So good afternoon, everyone. Once again, my name is Alfred Ralifor, and I'm from WWF, and I'm based in Fiji. And I will be moderating the session this afternoon. So the session this afternoon is about from crisis to climate resilience, local climate solutions in fragile states. And we have some community representatives from across the Asia Pacific region who's here to actually talk about and share their experiences and the solutions and the challenges that they face based on their local situations. So our first speaker this afternoon is Nida Collado, as the president of the Makatumbaland Community-Based Forest and Coastal Management. Nida Collado was granted the Wangari Maathai Forest Champions Award in 2024 at the Food and Agricultural Organizations of the United Nations headquarters in Rome, Italy. She also has received multiple awards in the Philippines due to her staunch advocacy and resilient work for indigenous peoples and local communities, management of their forest reserves, forest resources, and as of present, she leads the national body for community-based forest management in the Philippines, ensuring that community-based forest management policies and reform align to existing mandates. Nanay Nida, as we fondly call her, hurries to bravely apprehend illegal loggers and encroaches into their protected forest as soon as sounds of chainsaws reaches her. Her sleeves are always rolled and boots ready to take care of their nurseries and of agroforests. Our second speaker is Hang Dal. He is the head of the Climate and Energy Program at WWF Myanmar, where he works to create the enabling conditions of Myanmar's energy transformation from small to large-scale renewable energy investments. His work has always strengthened nature-based solutions for climate resilience, ensuring that they are central to WWF's conservation strategies. With experience at COP28 and COP29, he continues to advocate for climate finance in fragile contexts and just, inclusive energy transition for Myanmar. And our third speaker this afternoon is Minabel Pomerin. He's the program coordinator at Non-Timber Forest Products Exchange Platform and manages the social and environmental funding facility for Asia's indigenous people and local communities called Pastor Rise Fund. So here are our esteemed panelists for this session. Before I start the session proper, I just wanted to give a brief background in terms of what this session is all about. So this event's main aim is to highlight community-led climate adaptation and resilience projects in fragile and conflict-affected settings, with a focus on indigenous knowledge, decentralized governance, and women's leadership. So here we will have great attention to fragile and conflict states in global climate discussions. Is critical as these contexts are actually often overlooked, but they are actually quite important. And despite being highly exposed to conflicts, ongoing conflicts in their local context, they are also exposed to climate risks. However, they are quite rich in traditional knowledge and nature-based solutions. So without further ado, As part of this panel, I will be asking questions to our panelists, and I will give them some time to respond. And at the end of the panel discussions, then we will open the floor for questions and also for comments and feedback. So the first question will go um, to Dina and Hangdal. The first question is, local communities are often the first responders to climate shocks. What are some proven ways to strengthen community-led climate initiatives, especially women in fragile areas where formal institutions are limited or absent? I will ask Dina to actually respond first before I give the floor to Hangdal.
Local women's groups are frequently at the forefront of the community response in fragile settings. What types of long-term investment and partners are needed to strengthen these organizations so they drive local-led climate solutions and support the shift from crisis resilience? Women are wearing many hats. We often carry many responsibilities in our family. One major factor that could affect the women's participation in the community is when financial problem arises. The priority to make the family survive comes first. Having said this, is the important to create sustainable livelihood to women. Empowering women is this way also empowers the family. Empowering the family, empowering the community. But these projects should not start and end and giving grants aids. We should be equipped with new knowledge and adapt technology for an effective and efficient result management knowledge, so on.
Thank you, Mira. So now I will ask Andal if you could actually respond to the same question.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. So my answer is more of how WRF approach for doing environment conservation in fragile and conflict stage. So as we know that in the fragile stage, we really need to safeguard environment, social, and we have a very strong environment and social safeguard in operating in every working with local communities and indigenous people. And as Dina has mentioned that women are really the forefront of climate response. And for us is that when we do environment conservation, when we support the communities for climate resilience, we really need to look from gender lens, because that these women play a very critical role in community resilience. So how can we support, and what are the proven way that we have been applying in all of our activities is that we really need to strengthen the women participations, gender inclusions in all activities. So it's not just a normal participation, but we really need to strengthen women can come up, women can speak up their voices, and we really need to listen and get their ideas. And another thing is that we really need to co-design the solutions that we want to intervene. And I think it's for us is that we look at different programs. For example, we really have a good example from Delta communities. So the women have been doing a lot of climate adaptation on their own because they are very vulnerable. The communities has been vulnerable to climate change and crisis, but they are not. They themselves did not recognize that their role is very important. So for us is that WRAV, we always do once in a year that the appreciation for women. So one specific event a year to really appreciate and making highlighting the roles of women in climate resilience in these fragile states. So in that way, they also themselves realize that they play a very critical role, and they are very important in this climate resilience and climate adaptation work. So I would stop here, and I would we can discuss more later. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Hang Dal, for that. And I think it critically highlights the critical role of women that women play in terms of adapting to climate, but at the same time, in situations where it's quite fragile and conflict situations. And this is important to demonstrate the power of women and the difficulties and the challenges that they face, but also the willingness to advance climate adaptation while at the same time looking after family. So the second question goes to our third speaker, Maina. How does non-timber forest products explains platform integrate climate resilience into its strategies for sustainable forest management and NTFP harvesting, especially considering the increasing frequency of climate change? Of climate change-related shocks in South and Southeast Asia.
Thank you for having us here in this panel. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Maina Pomarin, and I am the program coordinator at the Non-Timber Forest Products Exchange Program, or NTFP EP. We are a regional organization based in the Philippines, and we work mostly with indigenous peoples and local communities in areas of conservation, tenure rights and governance, indigenous food and health, and sustainable climate adaptive livelihoods, especially based on NTFPs. Before maybe I proceed to my quick sharing, if I can show a video about one of the works that we do at NTFP EP.
Approximately 25% of the Earth's surface and ocean areas are managed by indigenous peoples and local communities. But it is estimated that these areas hold 80% of the planet's biodiversity. In Southeast Asia, these areas go by the different names Hutan Adat, Lupaing Ninuno, and Kao, but these are generally called territories of life. Given the inextricable link between custodian indigenous communities with nature surrounding them, it is this link and their stewardship on their environment that ensures the sustainability of resources.
So this is just a very short teaser video. You will see more in YouTube and look for Territories of Life. This was filmed a few years back, featuring 5 territories of life whom we've worked with as facilitator of the Southeast Asia indigenous and local community conserved areas. I am not sure if my friends here from Myanmar and other countries are part of this network. I think you are. This might have been taken from your territory. So thank you for sharing this wisdom and your practices also. NTFP has also been grateful for communities that allowing us to document, help in the mapping and delineation of their sacred territories, to also amplify the things that you are doing, community conservation and forest protection, governed by your indigenous wisdom and traditional knowledge, So we are happy to be part of this realities that communities live on the ground, and that we are part of sharing these stories. So NTFP being having worked closely with indigenous peoples and local communities, um, much of our interventions and programs are linked to the values and to the context that is being that is in the communities of IPs and LCs. Um, so we have provided different support, including livelihoods, support to the recognition of their tenure, um, and the livelihoods that are mostly based on the resources around them. And lately, because of the support through the grants facility at NTFP EP Asia, we have assisted women's groups and communities in building resource-based, NTFP-based livelihoods that help them in situations where they really need. For example, when they experience calamities, when they are under threats because of the environmental protection and the defense of their territories that they are doing. So this local economies where we help in where we support are based on their values, based on their aims and aspiration, and this is being sustained in the communities through the grants and as well as the linking and learning that we are providing in these communities.
Thank you very much, and it's really great to hear the non-timber forest product exchange platforms and and the grant facility that you're able to provide to ensure that indigenous peoples and local communities are able to access direct funding. And that is a great example, which is something that we are trying to push for when we are negotiating in a negotiating room, calling for easy and direct access for financing for indigenous people and local communities on the ground. So it's great to hear that you also have that kind of mechanism and the learnings that would actually help to support communities on the ground. So thank you very much for that. So we'll go to our second round of questions, and this is a question to Nida and also Hang Dao. As communities move from crisis towards climate resilient, what strategies can ensure that women, especially in fragile and conflict-affected areas, gain equitable access to resources, technologies, and financing needed to strengthen local climate solutions?
Hello. These are my points based on my own experience as a woman and a leader. Educate women, give access to training and seminars to equip them with knowledge. This is the first step for women to gain their confident voices to be heard. You only fear to speak when you feel that you don't know anything. Give them space and venue to express their ideas and share their skills. We did this through creating women's organizations and include women as one of the pillars of our missions and activities in protecting and preserving the environment. In our case, women has the big impact to encourage family members to join our cause.
Thank you very much for that. And I'll hand out for your response.
So thank you. So the question is really on how women really have equitable access to resource. So in terms of our approach is that, so normally in fragile states and other developing countries, women are really, they are not, they don't have much chance to involve in decision making. So our role is really to bring up this woman capacity to really to become more and involved in the leadership and decision making. So in order to do that, equitable access is very important. So how do we do that? So first is really we really need to understand each community. So even in Myanmar, we just say one country or one nation. But if we look at different ethnics, that there are like several ethnics and they really have their own culture, traditions, norms. So we really need to understand what are the cultural norms in terms of women and men. So in looking at that and understanding the cultural norms, then we can really provide how do we support women in specific communities. So in terms of equitable access is that one is to provide like a gender responsive access, I would say. So we provided revolving fund or women groups funding for the communities so that the women can form a women group, women forest user group. And one time we provide like a solar women group, so that's really promote like renewable energy access. So sometimes it's most of the work are really dedicated to men, but it's always important that we realize that women can do the same, and they play a very critical role because they are the one who really working on the livelihood for the whole family. So they really need to have this equitable access resource. So when we provide like revolving fund, then they can do a livelihood. They can have small shops. They can work on a small garden, or they can work on like a textile, handmade products and such. So in this climate and conflict fragile state, it's even harder for women to really have access. So it's our role as WRAP is to create equitable access to these vulnerable women, so that they can participate more, so that they can earn and they can also showcase how what their work is really have some impacts to the communities back, not only to their family but also for the community resilience to climate change. And again, the good examples are always back in our mangrove restoration projects. And our freshwater team has been actively working with women forest user group, and they nurtured like mud crab and this mud crab farming together with mangrove restoration, so that they can really improve their livelihood for their family and for the whole community. So it is really about giving the space, giving the opportunity for women involvement in these fragile states. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hang Dam. So our second question to Mina. In your experience, what role do traditional ecological knowledge and indigenous practices play in enhancing community resilience to climate change? And how does NTFP-EP support their preservation and adaptation?
For NTFP, Indigenous peoples and local communities, TEK or traditional ecological knowledge has been hailed really very highly as we help in the promotion of this knowledge and practices within the programs that we do. So grants that we are providing to communities are mostly based in recognizing this knowledge, and this in itself has been very valuable because it really proves the pivotal role of Indigenous peoples and local communities in their own territories' protection and conservation. So at this time, as you saw in the video, we are very much supporting the documentation, which we hope would sustain and continue the practices of communities in using their traditional knowledge, traditional wisdom, and practices in sustaining and protecting their territories of life. So support of NTFP goes into the community-based conservation, and actually the economies that are based in the use of these natural resources inside their territories are also helping to protect, because these are the sources of their economy. So it helps them leverage the protection that must go into the sustainable harvesting and use of these resources. We had also been doing work in knowledge transfer within the organization. We promote the engagement of youth in transferring these knowledges. Our grants also go to formal and informal transfer of this traditional ecological knowledge. For instance, we support mainstreaming of community traditional knowledges, but only for those community who are open and willing to share this, because we also believe in the self-determination of communities. We leave it to them what they want to share or keep it within their territories. So we have some academies, we support some academies to incorporate classes on ecology, ecofeminism, and in some, I think in Myanmar now, we are starting to support the integration of traditional knowledge in college curriculum. So I forgot the school, but that is in the works now in Myanmar. And informally, we also support mobile forest schools and schools of living traditions. So these are spaces that allow the discussion exchanges among communities, because even among them, there are also losses in cultural traditions. Like youth would share to us that some of their problem would be the out-migration of some of the young people, because their culture seems to be not that appealing to them. But recently, also youth-led, they are integrating the traditional knowledges into their traditional platforms for sharing these knowledges. And one of that, as I've mentioned, is the School of Living Tradition. So the funding that we are also supporting or providing to communities democratizes this plans and decisions of communities. So it is using their agency on what works for them, and that's where we are putting the support in.
Thank you very much. So I just have one final question to our panelists, and afterwards then I'm going to open the floor for our audience if you have any questions to ask our panelists. So the final question is, women in fragile states are deeply affected by both conflict and climate change, yet our voices are often underrepresented in decision-making spaces. How can we make sure that climate resilient efforts create inclusive platforms where women can lead, innovate, and influence policy? Do you want? Okay.
For us, in our community, we start 39 organizations, 39 members. But now we are already 300 members. And our responsible to the women's, we organize majority women's in the group, because the women is more powerful to help their husbands to follow what is good in the solution of the climate change now. And we are supporting the forest for protecting it. We are fighting for justice, abusing the forest. We are fighting for cases. We are fighting what we call, we are doing it in action. We are going to the forest if there are some, if they are destroying the destruction of the forest. That's why we want that the forests will be preserved so the climate will be sustained.
Thank you. Thank you for highlighting the important role women can play in terms of if we're more inclusive in terms of our climate actions and decision-making processes. So, Hantal or Maina, you'd want to respond to the question?
Uh, in the last 10 years that NTFP has been facilitating our grants facility, we had appropriated direct support to women's groups, women in the communities, and we saw that when they are given the opportunity, things things happen in the protection of their resources, in their economies. So I think giving that support directly to women is really very beneficial to the whole community, as well as you've also mentioned that women are the bearers of knowledge, and it helps in the transfer to the next generations. So we also support women as well as environmental human rights defenders in some cases that need support. Like for instance, there are women in the community that are at the forefront of defending their territories, and this defense work is oftentimes put them in a threatened and risky situation. So at NTFP, we made it available, the support, to our partners in these critical situations. So we have urgent and quick response grant to environmental defenders. And not only this is given to the defense work, but also if they have cases in the court, sometimes bail, if we can afford. And at the same time, women and families affected by calamities, as I don't know if you have heard the how do you call it, the typhoon that came and ravaged our country just before coming here at COP. It's always like this at the end of the year. We have 4 or 5 super typhoons, supercharged typhoons, devastating our communities, and the quick response grant has proven very helpful to communities, especially those we work in fragile and also geographically isolated communities, not only physically isolated, but they are also socially and politically unrecognized and invisible, as for example, because of the defense work that they are doing, protecting their communities, fighting against mines and plantations and dams. They had distanced themselves from basic services of the government, or the government is not really very keen to supporting them. So the grants sometimes leverages the support to these communities of forest defenders.
And Hangdao?
Sure. So I think it's really important that women can really involve more in decision making. And when we say resilience, it is a very big word. And how do we really measure this resilience? So at this COP, we heard a lot about resilience. But in terms of how our projects or how our support to the women in these fragile states has been really impactful. So in terms of how do we measure, or how do we see the results or impact, it really depends on how we educate, or how the capacities of women are really strengthened to really put into the climate actions and resilience work. So that's involved different sectors, livelihood improvement, and community engagement. So I think their role sometimes it's very difficult because in fragile states, it's culture very sensitive, and also like in terms of climate and crisis impact, women are like more vulnerable, and I think uh, as I mentioned earlier, for them to be more involved in decision making, one is to really strengthen their capacities. Second is to give more space and equitable access for resources, and our role is really to understand their needs. And I think it's if the women can really form like a working group as a women leadership, I think that's really important for our projects to be more impactful on the ground, because they are on the forefront of this climate resilience. And I think, for example, like it, in the Delta community, then women are always staying at home, taking care of the family. And when we provide trainings like trainings or disaster risk management, sometimes they cannot give your time because they need to give time to their families. So we really need to think of these gender responsive interventions, really think of their needs and their challenges. So in that way, I think we can really support more for women leaderships for climate resilience. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So we have some time left for the end of our session. So I would like to open the floor to our audiences if anyone has any questions for our panelists.
So I think, Mina, you talked a little bit about youth. So I guess my question is about young people, involving young people who maybe because they're in a fragile state might move for economic reasons, might move because of disasters, might move because of conflict. So how do you encourage young people who maybe see opportunities elsewhere and not at home or where they were born? How do you bring them in to climate resilience and make them part of that so they stay to help and be sustainable, I guess, with the solution? Yeah.
So NTFP, at NTFP, we have this program on youth empowerment and engagement. So it's a new program, but basically it is giving the platform to to the youth from the communities that we work with to gather together, build solidarity, so they themselves make a program to encourage more people to go back to the field, help in the sustaining of their culture and tradition. At present, what we see as, how do you call it, effective way is to bridge the mainstream and also some indigenous or local practices of the community. So, for example, using social media in the ecotourism livelihoods that our communities are doing. So they are promoting this ecotourism sites inside their territory, but still maintaining the sanctity of some of these parts and making sure that people are informed about how important their indigenous systems are to them, how important is the protection of their forests and resources around. So I think ecotourism that is managed by the community has been a very good, how do you call it, a way to engage youth to go back to their communities. Another example is the livelihoods that the communities are preparing. So, in some of our community-led enterprises, the youth help in promoting their products. So they have access to social media and modern technology. So these are shared by the youth, and that way they continue enriching their knowledge about their own cultural traditions, and at the same time, if there may be some needs to negotiate with their elders, like what should be shared to the public or what should be kept within their cultural communities, that is being done. So I hope I answered it.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? No further questions from the audience. And I have one more question for all of you before we end the session. So if you were to think about your own situations, your experiences, and from the communities that you are coming here from, you're representing, including the organizations you're representing, what would be one key message you would like the leaders in the negotiation room to take into consideration as they make decisions for COP30?
Okay, I can start. I've been here for almost 2 weeks already, and I'm not sure if it's only the side events or the meetings that I've been attended, but what resonates always is the recognition of the great work that Indigenous peoples and local communities are being done inside their territories. But I am hoping that beyond this recognition, we put a more concrete action. I think with this recognition should come the support, funding, and policies that will allow communities to continue this knowledge and practices that help us sustain our forests, our biodiversity, and help in the multifaceted crisis brought by climate change.
Thank you. And leader?
For me, this event, no. For me, in our community, we have a tenural instrument, the community-based forest management. I want that this will be held in support of this event to respect our tenure for security, because we are the one who is affected in the forest, and we are the one who is helping developing the forest, preparation for the next generation, that the forest will be saved for nothing. That's all.
So my key message to the COP, every COP, is that so we are always demand that the global South, developing countries, the fragile states, really need support. But it's not just we are raising our voice for support, but we are not really like the one who really do this climate change. The contribution is very minimal, but the impact in terms of climate change impact is really huge. So it's not just raising our voice for the support, but it's just our rights to like access to healthy environment. So in terms of from the point of view, human right points of view, we have the rights to access to our healthy environment, but our healthy environment got destroyed by other developed countries. So and these vulnerable communities in the fragile states are the one who really keep the forest and especially the biodiversity. So it's not just raising voice for fun, it's just for other support, but it's just our rights, that I would say. Thank you.
Thank you. So We have come towards the end of our session, and just to give a brief summary, we have heard from Nida Colado in terms of the critical role that the women in our community are playing in the Makatumbaland community-based forestry, forest management areas, and the importance and the challenges that the women in her communities continue to face in terms of the fragile and conflict situations that they're in, compounded by the continuous impacts of climate change. We also heard from Mina in terms of the platform, the non-timber forest product and exchange platform, and how it is supporting indigenous people and local communities across Asia to help support them in terms of not just capacity building, but in terms of the finance facility that the grant has in terms of providing direct access for indigenous people, local communities, but also for women's group on the ground to help finance the critical work and the role that they're playing at the community level. And we also heard from Hang Dao in terms of the critical role and the importance of organizations such as WWF that could help support the work of communities on the ground, but at the same time support the work of the non-timber forest product exchange platform in order to be able to scale community-based climate actions, not just in indigenous people and local communities, but also in fragile and conflict situations. And I hope that as we negotiate here in this COP, that we would take into consideration and continue to amplify the importance of highlighting the challenges that communities in fragile and conflict states continue to face in the face of climate change, and not only to support access to resources like that, but hopefully decisions at this COP could actually recognize the important and the rights of indigenous people and local communities, the rights of communities like NIDA in terms of their tenure and ownership of their resources and their land, and hopefully the climate finance negotiations over here could adopt decisions that will invest, to provide further invest into finance facilities like miners' work that could continue to support communities and vulnerable women in the grassroots level. So thank you so much for your participation, and thank you so much for our speakers over here. And we hope that we will be able to continue to collaborate more and further in the future. Thank you. Group photo time? Yeah.